Hi everybody, so today I'm going to be doing an updated brow tutorial. Well, I guess not updated because I don't think I've ever really done a brow tutorial, but before I get started, I want to go through and show you guys how I groom my brows. Now, when I start grooming my brows, the first thing I do is clean up the majority of the hairs around the brow shape that I want. Now, before I do that, I actually stencil in my brows the way I kind of generally want them to be, so I know the general area of where I want to take off the hair and the general area of where I want to keep the hair. So I use some stencils. You can find these anywhere. Find one that you like, and you can use that just before when you're kind of grooming your brows. I don't recommend using these to actually stencil them in every day. I find that it's hard, and it's hard to get them even, and also it just looks too fake, so I would recommend just using these if you're going to be grooming your brows. Now, when I groom my brows, I use a combination of three things. The first thing I use is thread. I actually thread my brows around to get the majority of the hair off. Then what I do is I actually go in with a little bit of tweezers. These are just the Tweezerman travel tweezers, just because they're cheaper and they work just the same, to get any hairs that are stubborn or that I may have missed with my thread. So I would recommend always having a pair of tweezers on hand, plus they're good for applying false lashes and things like that, so I recommend always having that with you. Now, the thread that I used, if you wanted to know, is just plain 100% cotton thread. So if you are somebody in the market, you can just buy any thread. I think like polyester thread, anything like that would work just as well, but if you wanted to know, I use the cotton one. I also always have a mascara spoolie. This one's clear, but I have a bunch of them. I'll show you this one, just to kind of brush my hairs into place. I also always have a comb. Now I'm going to explain to you why I have this. You can also use, if I can find one of these like brow brushes and combs. I personally don't like this. I find them harder to use, but you can use a comb like this or just a regular comb, just the ones that have like the fine teeth. I also use the Tweezerman brow scissors, and the reason I use the brow scissors is because I like to trim my brows into place, as you can see, because I have the typical Asian eyebrows where my hair grows straight downwards. So you will always see hairs underneath my brows when I do have them, since they do tend to kind of go downwards when I have them just by themselves, like naturally. So I do tend to trim them. I find that if you use a comb, you can get it fairly even. You do get them fairly short, so if you don't want them too short, then I would recommend just using a spoolie to brush them up and then groom off the longer hairs that still stick up. But since actually my hairs stick downwards, I tend to just like to trim them all the same length, and I find that it looks best on me, and that's my personal preference. You can do whatever you want with your brows. I just personally do that. Now, when I use the comb, I brush it downwards or upwards depending on which part of the brow I want, and then what I do is I slightly shift it against the grain. So my hairs and most people's hairs normally grow outwards, so what you would do is you would comb down or up and then go slightly inwards to kind of push up the hair so that you get an even layer, and then just trim off as much as you want. If you want, you can just comb them down or comb them up and then again just cut. You can also do that for underneath, just kind of trim what's kind of sticking down. I personally don't like doing that. I just find that it doesn't look as clean, so I don't do that, but you can if you want. Now, for my brow products, I use a bunch of different products. The first thing I have that I've been using is the Jordana Brow Powder Duo in the shade 03 Dark, and it comes with a medium shade and a dark shade for your brow, both powder, and they work really nice, very creamy. I love them. One that I use for more of an ashy tone or light brow, I use the 09 Rich Stable by Revlon, but two that I recently got and have been loving are the MAC Embark Shadow, which looks like this. Let me show you so it doesn't reflect, which is more of a red tone dark brown, and then the MAC Brun or Brune, it looks like this, just so you can see. So I have more of a warm brown and then a cool brown, just to kind of mix and match. I also noticed that in the Jordana one, the top one is more warm tone and then the darker one is more cool tone. So again, you can mix them up and match them to your personal brow color. Now, the brushes that I use, I actually use a couple. I use two brushes because I find that the way I do them now is different and a lot easier and faster than the way I did it before. Before, I used to always conceal around my brow after I was done, just to kind of clean up any edges, but I find that if you use one of these, this one's the flat eyeliner number 16 brush by Sephora. I don't know if you can still get this because I did get this when they were like on sale for like $5, so I don't know if you can still get it, but any very thin flat brush will work. And the way I use this is to actually just outline outline my brow, and then I use this brush, which is an Eco Tools angled brush, which is a little bit thicker, to kind of fill in my brow, and it just makes the application a little bit quicker and look a little bit more blended just in the center, but keeping that edge that I normally like, that I normally use concealer for, but this is good and it saves me product and a step. So I will show you right now how to do it. I'm not going to zoom in because I want you to see it the way that I would see it from looking in my mirror, which is about right here. And I'm going to actually today use the Jordana Brow Powder Duo, and lately I've been going for a lighter brow. Normally I would outline in the dark color and then fill in with the lighter color, but lately I've just been using the lighter color. You can use whichever color you want. I mix mine up. You can use just one that's your favorite. And go into that product. And the way I do this is I start on the top, kind of towards the middle. And as you can see, I start my line and bring it straight down like that. Once I have that, I go back into the product and I go again from the middle, start, and connect it on the bottom. So you just want to make sure that the outer tail is very crisp, especially if you are somebody who likes a brow similar to the way I normally do mine, which is like this, where I have a very crisp edge. And then I go in with a little bit of product, not too much. You don't need to even really reapply. And then just kind of feather the color in, keeping a pretty defined edge. Just like that. Now what I do, since you can see it's not filled in all the way in the center, I go in with the Eco Tools brush, and since it's a little bit thicker and a little bit more blendable, like easier to use, I use it to kind of feather in the color on the inner portion of my brow and also in the front portion right here, so it doesn't look so harsh on the inner portion. Just like that. I hope you enjoyed. That's pretty much it for all I do with my brows on a day-to-day basis as far as filling them in. I can do a video showing you how I actually specifically groom my brows, but I tend to keep my brows clean as much as I can. I don't like to do it like every 2 weeks or whatever. I find that that just is too much of a hassle, and I can tend to lose my brow shape when I'm doing it that way, since my hairs will grow and I'm not really sure which shape that I originally had and that I originally like. So to keep them pretty even, I do clean them up on a regular basis, probably about every 4 days to a week, just depending on how bad my hairs are growing in and if they're growing in thick or anything like that, just to kind of keep them clean and in the shape that I want. But as you can see, it's fairly natural looking. It's not something that takes a lot of time. When you actually get it down to like how you personally like it, it doesn't take a lot of time at all. I used to kind of conceal around it. I find that it doesn't really look as natural. Sometimes it can leave like a shiny effect on your brow because of the creamy concealer, and it can almost look like Sharpie brow, even if it is a little bit thicker. Like mine isn't too thin, it's a little bit thin, but it's not too thin, and even then sometimes it looks like I Sharpied on my brow or tattooed on my brow. So if you can avoid using concealer, I would recommend it, and recommend using a smaller brush like this. I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope I gave you a lot of tips and tricks. If you want to conceal around your brow, just conceal underneath your brow with a flat concealer brush, not with a very small, like thin brush, just because this will give you that kind of tattooed brow effect, and this will give it more of a feathered look but still give you like that highlighted crisp edge on the bottom of your brow. I don't recommend doing it on the top because again it will look very fake. I hope you all enjoyed this to get the brow, and you can kind of see the difference between my two, which is why I only did one brow, even though it kind of looks funny right now and I'm not really a huge fan of my natural brows, but it gives you an idea. Again, I hope you guys got a lot of tips. If you have any extra tips that you want to share with people, leave them in the comment below, or you can email me them and I will share them in another video. And that's it for this video. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye everybody.